Welcome, everyone. Let everybody have a chance just to jump on at the top of the hour here. We're about a minute before. Hope everybody's having a great day. And it's hard to believe, honestly. I don't know about everybody else, but for me personally, that it's August. I went into Costco and it's like Halloween. I'm like, wait a minute, summer's over. So, hello as well. So yes, I was pretty surprised that think about it almost being at now at the back end of the year. Well, without further ado, to oops.
Satan, get behind me. I don't want to hear that.
Yes, and all the kids in my neighborhood are ready, gearing up for school on Thursday. I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, well, like I said, welcome to the rest of August and kicking off before we all get into Labor Day here. We'll have our session right after Labor Day, that Wednesday. But really excited this morning to introduce Robin Murphy. She asked me not to put the other title in front, so I'm doing that on purpose, everybody. And and but I do want to say something that's really cool. The Houston Chronicle yesterday had a whole opinion article about the work that Robin and the team is doing at College Station and Texas A&M, and this is just amazing because it just ties to that. So I encourage everybody to read that article because it will change you about your feeling of what FEMA is and everything, and how important the local jurisdiction is in case of any kind of emergencies. And you just sort of see everything that Robin and her team and all of this is about. So it's just a great introduction and a great segue. So again, thank you for coming on, and looking forward to having your discussion.
All right. Well, howdy, as we say in Texas. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to give a presentation style. I am a professor, and so that means I don't know how to do anything except talk with PowerPoint. I think the strategy here is if you could hold questions. We've got a lot of time at the end for questions, of which I hope there are a lot. If there's something absolutely critical that's not making sense, or I'm making assumptions that you don't have the background for, need to ask a question, jump in. Otherwise, we'll head for the end. So at this point, you should see a generic title slide. Drones and
Yes,
women.
indeed.
All right. Well, we're good. Let's go forward. This is work that I've done over with the drones since 2004, and through the Center for Robot Assisted Search and Rescue with Justin Adams and David Merrick. David is at Florida State University, and he and I, between us and TAMU and Florida State, do anchor, sort of like the anchor tenants of a mall on that. So I want to talk with you about how drones are used in actual disasters. Let's see if we can, there we go. So I'm sure when you think of, we had Hurricane Debbie come through, we just had Beryl, the last really big bad one was Ian. And you typically see that this is clearly drone footage, right? You've low altitude, you've got everywhere going from there, probably shot by the locals. Actually, no, it was by Florida, the state of Florida, there. But, you see this drone footage. Well, how do you know what to do during a disaster? What do you fly? How do you know what missions? How do the emergency managers think about tasking these drones and these drone teams? And so that's what I'm going to try to cover today. And I'm sure, hopefully generate lots of questions and suggestions along the way. Now, I am basing all of this is what we called evidence-based analysis. This isn't, oh yeah, I flew drones. I mean, I have literally led the very first team to fly drones at a disaster. That was in 2005 at Hurricane Katrina, and then at Hurricane Wilma. And all of these disasters, federally equivalent disasters, we've flown at, and we have flown for an agency having jurisdictional authority. So, it's not just us getting up there and say, hey, look, I took pretty pictures. So we're up to 26 at this point. David Merrick is out there with Hurricane Debbie right now, and I am in air conditioning. So there's something to be said there. All right. So what I'm thinking is the questions you might have are, how are drones actually used? And when we talk about use, can we say anything about the missions or the techniques or things about that? And do the missions vary by disaster and by the phase of disaster? Do you do things differently before, during, after, what that? And what would you, why do we care? What does this mean for emergency managers? This idea of missions and being precise about them. And what does that mean for drone teams? And the big takeaway is, whoa, it turns out flying's the easy part. There's a lot more to it to get the right information to the right person. So let's jump in. So how are drones used for disaster in terms of missions or techniques? And first off, a disaster is going to exceed, by definition, exceeds local abilities to handle, local resources. So something has happened. So not just a local wildfire may be handled by the county, which has jurisdiction, and it never gets to a disaster. When it hits 4 or 5 counties and they're having to call in other agencies and getting help and stuff from other regions, the rest of the state, other states, then we become a disaster. Okay, so how are they used in terms of disasters for different missions? Well, the most important thing to know in this case, it's not about the drone. It's really, the point is the drone is being flown to get data. So the trick is whether the data from that drone gets to the right person in the right form at the right time so that they can make the right decision, whatever that decision is. So we need to understand what decision whoever is requesting the drone, there is something they are trying to get done, to make a decision about, and they need data in some form. And our job is to get it to them. And actually, the people in the EOC may not even care if you put a camera on a pigeon at some point. They just, often they just need the data and they need it to be verified. All right, so a lot of times when you see defining a mission, if you look in the aerospace literature and the drone literature and the various, I teach drones, and you get like terms like, oh, well, a mission, are we going to use a first person point of view, cinematic type line? Are we doing maps? We're doing maps and we just need to use GPS waypoints. Or we say, oh, we must, there are missions for rotorcraft and missions for fixed wing. So the first thing you do is figure out, is it a fixed wing or rotorcraft mission? Okay, the techniques that we've evolved at Cresar is that we really look at a mission as 4 things. It's what is the objective? What's the data product that who's ever requesting it? The agency wants to meet this objective. What data product do they need that will satisfy that objective and that they're expecting and that they can actually open? Putting them in some weird little file format that nobody can do is not a win. What's the urgency? Just because emergency manager asks for information doesn't mean they meant I need it in 15 minutes or I can wait 2 days. So that's always good to know. And risk, as you are, yeah, I could fly the drone there, but there's a high risk to the drone or there's a high risk to civilians. So those are good things to know. So we look at those 4 things, a tuple, a 4-element tuple, for those of you in the engineering sciences is what we typically refer to. Okay, so this is a big eye chart. Jennifer has a handout with this on it. So over the years, we've identified 9 distinct missions using this objective data products, urgency, and risk thing. And these are ordered in frequency of occurrence that we see. And we'll talk more about the timing of these missions a little bit later. We'll cut and paste. But the most important thing that emergency managers, responders in the field want is they want to see what's going on. They want that rapid needs assessment. How bad is anybody there? And the second follow-up question is always, okay, that neighborhood is way bad hurt. How do we get resources? What roads are open? What's flooded? So that recon rapid needs assessment, and that's usually done either in an ad hoc way or a hasty recon. So ad hoc is just give me pictures, a few pictures, short video, under 90 seconds. 90 seconds tells it all, a panorama. sometimes is away. Our hasty recon variant is when, okay, you can quickly give me a very low resolution map. So those of you who fly drones know that, like Pix 4D, if you've got a fixed wing, you can cover a large area in 20 minutes, and in 35 minutes, you've got a map. So while you're driving back, you can get them that map. But the big thing there, urgency is immediate, and it's a normal risk. Doesn't matter if you're flying over people or things like that. It is during the immediate disaster, the first 72 hours. So the emergency managers have special prerogatives, privileges at that time. You can stand wherever you want to. You're not trespassing or that. You're just trying to figure out what's going on and save lives and save property, prevent economic loss as well, livelihoods to people later on. The second most important one, or the second most common one, is tactical situation awareness. And that is where I've got, task force leader, I've got this team going downrange. Let me pop a drone up, see what they're doing. Oh no, you go to the left, you can't go any further. That tree's there, but if you take that deer trail, there's look, left, other left, other left. Yeah, you're going to see a game trail. Follow that around. You don't have to worry about cutting the tree down that's blocking the road. So that sort of thing doing with live streaming. Of course, that's local live streaming and real time normal. Notice that means you have to be able to do live streaming. So you've got to have that set up for there. Always nice to have an extra monitor to show the person because having that little mobile device over the looking over the shoulder of the pilot, in hot weather gets really sticky icky. Damage assessment. So now that's becoming more popular as well. Damage assessment, often what we'll see are three variants. One is two variants, right? Desktop critical infrastructure inspection. So that is where if we can get 4 views, click, click, click around a piece of critical infrastructure, a nadir view, and then 1 video. So 5 still images and a video kind of going an orbit around there. That's often enough for somebody sitting in the air conditioning, like in Atlanta or Chicago or Sacramento, to say, oh yeah, that's fine. Or mark that somebody's going to have to go out there and fix some stuff before we can reopen it. And so a place like even a small area, Collier County, near Fort Myers, there'll be over 200 of those critical infrastructure things that normally you send people out. And of course, let's think about Florida. Let's think about swamps. Let's talk about flooded swamps, how hard that is to have a person go around. Usually they get like 1 view, right, from a camera holding their phone and doing that. And, not really willing to go in after the snakes to try to get the backside views. So the drones are a big win. But we also see that damage assessment, a lot of times you want to get, like if you're looking at how the levees are holding up, you might get high resolution maps. So now you don't want to sacrifice accuracy and resolution. You want to get a really good map, or you want to get an elevation map. You really want to do that. And that means twice as much work. So that turns out the damage assessment is important for strategic decisions, the FEMA type of decisions, getting money, getting money and getting these larger resources versus saving lives. And typically that can be, give it to me tomorrow morning. We sent you out today, you can run it tonight, but try to get it to us by 7 in the morning for our next planning cycle. Okay, and again, you're still in this normal risk thing, typically not posing that. Now we start things for us going on, we see mapping and geospatial support. So there are sometimes when I just need to see, we want to put together what the damages for the whole county, or in the case of a building collapse, like we saw at the Surfside collapse, every morning they would load up the base maps, all the FEMA teams and the responders who are doing the digging, and everybody were sharing a common set of software right on their mobile device. And so the base map, instead of doing the Google map view, which of course was pretty darn wrong, right? Because the building had collapsed, were using the maps that they had run at 6 in the morning at dawn and put together. And so now they had those base maps. Everybody knew what it looked like, and they would be updated every shift. What a nice use of drones for that and to enable that. And you also see with, again, at Surfside, debris volume assessment. How much debris was being removed from the rubble? How much? And then checking against How much were the dump trucks saying they were hauling out of there? Because we would never suspect anybody might fudge some numbers, right? So that, and again, that's not as critical in timing and urgency. Yeah, you're flying over people. However, in this case, often you're flying over people are part of the activity. So there's not a, the FAA regulations are very loose, but you have to be a little more careful about that, right? When you go to detailed structural inspection, you're looking at bridges or buildings, you're getting up close. You can see now you're flying, you may be just video, maybe good enough still images, 3D reconstructions. These are typically civil engineers. They're not going to make a snap decision anyway, so you may have 1 to 2 days to get it to them. But now you're flying typically close and under things. And so now you're risking the loss of the aircraft. And so if you only have 1 or 2, you may choose to defer that to the end. Wellness check. So now you imagine as the event has gone on, an earthquake, a flood, a hurricane, everybody's calling in 411 saying, we haven't heard from granddad. We haven't heard from Aunt Nellie. And you get this whole list. So then you get started tasking the task forces to go out and try to see if they're okay. And so one thing to do is to go to an area and just start going to that location, fly the drone over there, look around, try to fly low. Do you see signs? Are the cars still in the driveway? In one case, we saw the grandfather looking up at the drone, kind of confused, like, why is there a drone flying over here? And so we took a picture, and it was, we could check that one off pretty quick, right? But, looking, and sometimes you actually look in windows, you actually fly low up there. And again, you're looking at a loss of aircraft. Missing person search. You'll have Hurricane Michael. Several people were assumed to have, were known to have stayed and were missing, assumed to be pushed inshore by the big storm surge. So now you're trying to look for them. Sometimes you do it as a hasty search where you kind of know where it might, and you look there first, and then you go back and do a more orderly scan every, centimeter. Tactical delivery, right? We've all seen the videos of people dropping off water or life jackets to people in floods and things like that. That is done a little bit. It's often very ad hoc. It's usually a tactical team in the field seeing it and deciding to do it rather than something that comes as a formal request. And it's really nice to have live streaming to see what's going on, how close you're getting, and everybody see what's going on. Indoor search is becoming a big thing. We saw that a lot at Ian. As beginning to emerge, the police have been using, public law enforcement has been using drones to look indoors, right, for things. But now looking indoors, going into these upper stories of condos and trying to look around to see if you're seeing anybody, survivors or victims, to document. And then also there's the documentation of at the Surfside collapse, part of the building was still standing. People had evacuated in less than 15 minutes. As a courtesy, everybody who had a door open or could get to Florida flew and tried to get the drones to document for their insurance purposes what's all in this house, because of course you're going to forget, right? If all of a sudden right now you had to run out of your house, you would probably tell the insurance company you would miss some things. So those are the 9 missions. So one thing I want you to look at and think about what that means is look at what the objectives, how that sort of is shaping up. Some of these missions are tactical. They are directly life-saving. There's something that's really controlled by the people on the ground or directly helping those boots on the ground, those responders. Other are strategic. They're decisions about resource allocation or decision-wide understanding. How much resources do I need you to, I'm going to document that these many neighborhoods are wiped out. Therefore, we now have funds. We automatically get this amount of funds for the state. And so we can bring in more people and more resources and stuff, things. So we have these, I think of it tactical as the people in the field. Strategic people are somewhere where there's air conditioning, looking at those things. So we're going to see that the missions, drones can be used in so many interesting ways. Another one we're going to see again is that if you're thinking about them in terms of data product, we're really seeing sometimes the data products are observer oriented. They're imagery, things where your goal is to show what you're seeing, what's valuable, what's informative, and get that in a short form conceptually back to somebody who can also look at it. So it's back to that, a picture's worth 1,000 words. We're trying to do that as well, right? So you've got these observer-oriented missions, and you have these map-oriented missions, and the map-oriented can sometimes be low resolution or high resolution, sometimes elevation maps, sometimes super-duper 3D reconstructions. Right? So missions. Now let's talk about disasters and phase of the disasters. So do the missions depend on disasters? Most of the disasters that make them disasters are because they're wide area. The exception to that would be like the Surfside building collapse, which is one block, not a wide area, but certainly a high consequence event. But they all seem to follow the same pattern. We'll talk a little bit about there. There is the first 2 days, 2, maybe 3 days, of which everybody is just focused on immediate information for life saving and mitigation of anything that's going to make it worse. And that's true of a building collapse, that's true of an earthquake, that's true of flooding, that's true of hurricanes, true of volcanic eruptions. So you've got that. So the first 3 days, and that also gets back into that 72 hours. Remember, you always hear FEMA say, be prepared 72 hours to be on your own. Yeah, because the first 72 hours, you are just trying to figure out what's going on and, kind of whack-a-mole. Let's try to get to the most important, do the greatest good for the public, save the majority of lives. And then if it's, everybody else will just kind of get to you later. And then you see day 3 and 4. Now we're getting into we need to start. Where's the money coming from? Hey, we need to get the documentation. Now we need to get this. Now we really need these other big things. Now we need these other big things going on. And then we start tapering off, hopefully after day 4 or 5. I mean, Katrina went for 2 weeks, which was a bad sign. Harvey went for 2 weeks, and that's a sign of a really bad disaster when the responders take more than a week to get out of there. They're still doing it. But also, if you look in terms of missions, kind of makes sense, right? Your missions, the recon, rapid needs, the tactical situation awareness, where you're just still images, panorama, short video. Nobody's going to look at a 20-minute video. I cut one down to 2 minutes and got yelled at. The state emergency team was like, nope, 90 seconds is your max. Tell us, if you can't tell us what we need in that, we're not going to be able to look at it. And streaming is interesting because streaming often just distracts people, right? It just, oh, look, pretty, but it doesn't really give them any more information than a single image would. Now, as we look at those, going to those low resolution orthomosaic maps, we're going to get you a large area as fast as we can. We're going to sacrifice resolution for speed. Okay. And then we'll come back and we may actually go back and redo missions with more mapping missions with lower altitude, higher overlap, to get more accuracy. But first we start off quick and dirty, and then come back if we need to and do it there. And then as you see going to the day 6 or 7, now you're doing the cleanup activities. You're checking those indoor searches. You're looking for the missing persons that no one's found and stuff. And so now you're again going back to something that's very typically more observer oriented. So what does this mean for emergency managers and for drone teams? So if you're an emergency manager, typically incident command is going to put requests to whoever is your UAS director, who is often should be part of the air directorate. So they have a whole group that's coordinating all the helicopters and the big military looking aircraft with all the sensors on them and all that. They're trying to coordinate that. And now it's become common practice to put, as a sidebar, put the UAS people there, because sometimes they just say, look, hey, look, no, that's actually better done by a fixed wing, by a crewed aviation versus this, and they can trade off and understand what's going on. So then it becomes that person's agency has to try to translate what they're asking for into those 9 missions, right? What is it they're trying to do? What data product do they need? Do they need it right now in risk? Usually these requests come mostly, about 6 in the morning, 6 or 7 for the planning cycle. And then you get everybody out, and then a few trickle in the middle of the day. But, you can think of it as a 12-hour planning cycle. And so then the director has to figure out what drone teams are available, what's the best match to cover all of these missions and get everybody out there and do that. And so then they make those task assignments. So for emergency managers, let me just back up a minute, it becomes very important just to think about what is it that I want? And then how am I going to translate that? Who can get that for me? Which agencies? Then it becomes important for the teams themselves to apply the appropriate techniques. So as we all know, drones fail. There's things like that. Having a couple of drones there. In one case at Ian, an update to one of the mapping software packages was glitching. And it's like, okay, but we have another third-party package right here on somebody else's phone. We're moving to that, right? And knowing those appropriate techniques are, this group had, the fixed wing isn't working. We can do this slower with a rotorcraft, so we'll do that. So having the drone squad understanding what the actual objective is in the data product, so in the field, they can make those decisions to just get the job done the best way possible and really satisfy that. But the big surprise, I think, for most people is that, right, we saw a lot of the data products were actually maps, right? They were surveys. That has to be post-processed. So not only do you have to have the software to autonomously collect the images, trying to do that manually, which I have done back in the early aughts, doesn't yield very good results, right? So you want to have that software, but then you've got to go and stitch that together because these agencies don't have that software. And by the way, they're not really wild of files being named DCIM, and which means, what does that mean? And image001.jpg, so you've got to curate the data products. You've got to get that data into the format that they can ingest and use, right? And so that is what we're finding. We've got some data on that from Ian. Most of the human error is not in flying. People are, no matter how tired they are, and they are very tired, we've got data on that as well, are not making mistakes on tasking the drone. What they are doing is messing up the data. And in some cases, scrubbing the flight, that you wind up the flight was flown in vain because it was the wrong data or in the wrong format. So it can be used. So that's becoming more and more important. Now, if you get back to this, I think for drone teams, particularly in emergency managers who are trying to build up their own program, you start seeing, if you look at the missions versus the data products, you see that there's no clear win, right? So do you want to go with general purpose rotorcraft because you need hover and stare in a lot of these, right? Those observers, but you also need mapping. Or do you want to invest in rotorcraft and for observer oriented and fixed wing for map oriented, but realize 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is an actual workable system. So you're just not buying one, you're going to have to buy multiple to have them available. So then, most groups are like, well, that's expensive, right? And you have to stay trained on it. And then you have as well as all the software and stuff, right? And so another thing is that you typically, in disaster, you're asking for help from other agencies. Well, it turns out that fire rescue teams, they do a lot of drones with structure fire, which is great for hover and stare. They almost never do mapping. And so that law enforcement and fire rescue really, it's out of their wheelhouse to do to do map oriented stuff. So do you want to bring in your Department of Transportation people? They have drones. The roads people do roads, and also your public works people, agencies will often do drones with the elevation maps to try to figure out what's going on. So bring them in for there. And so maybe as you're trying to staff things, you start thinking, well, I know this group, these agencies do this, and I'm going to do that. And by the way, I can start off with the fire rescue teams who will already be right there, the agency, and then get the Department of Transportation, the public works people, and civil engineer types, bring them in, and they'll be coming in on day 3 versus the ones who are already there and taking advantage of that. So those are some trade-offs and trade spaces that you begin to see as you do this. But the big thing that I want to leave you with, it's not about flying the drone and all of this. That drones are pretty stable now. It's not 2005 where you're just, it's sort of like, when is it going to fall out of the sky? Not if. It's about the data. And that's the most important thing, because we're now becoming an essential part of the process of enabling emergency managers to make the right decisions. And of course, that makes a huge impact on saving lives, but also on mitigating any kind of spills that would have long-term economic consequences and getting everybody back up to speed. So I'll stop here and happy to answer questions.
Well, we've got one from Debbie. She's asking whether or not you have been using thermal sensors in some of your instances.
Yes. So thermal has typically been used for missing persons. It does not. You think, hey, this would be great to work at night, right? So we'll be able to fly at night when nobody's around. This will take, in the morning you'll have even up to date. Turns out for trying to do maps, it doesn't align. They don't stitch worth a happy hoot. It's lower at least most of the affordable thermal images are lower resolution. And then we get into the thing where people can interpret light, dark, even with false color. Now, there's ways, we're working on ways around it. If Tom Mancini, one of my grad students, is on it, he's looking at ways to update that. And we are heavily collecting thermal as well as, that. But, and thermal, even with missing person searches, we've had cases where it's worked great. And we say thermal either works or it doesn't. I mean, you get, particularly if you're looking for somebody and it's in the morning in Texas and in Florida, oh my gosh, if you don't catch it at dawn, then everything is hot. Everything's the same temperature. I mean, we've got a case of where we've got some video where we had one of the grad students take just 2 steps into a bush, a mesquite bush that isn't even that many leaves. He was barely visible before, and he becomes invincible. And of course, people are going to be under a tree. Most people, unlike there was this European team that said, look, we can use computer vision to find missing person. And they showed a person literally in the middle of a field on a hill. It was like we were able to find Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music. It's like, that's not where people get lost and just stand in the middle and say, find me. They're over by the trees, and the Alzheimer people like to be in bushes. All right, I went long on that. Sorry.
That's all good. I have another question here. Are you using Pix4D Mapper, Matic, or React in any of your scenarios?
Absolutely. Pix4D React, that's our low resolution. We've worked with them. Justin Adams worked with them quite a bit to say, no, slower. It needs to be faster. It needs to work on a laptop. It needs to be, no more of these 15 friggin' steps. Nobody can remember them. We're fat finger, we're hot, we're sweaty. We don't do this every day. We need it fast. And we need to get an output that somebody can do. Not everybody, somebody in that big board and that big emergency operations center where the governor stands has all the Esri stuff. The rest of us don't. The guy in the SUV trying to track all of the teams and get them going, they're in that one of those mobile apps doesn't have that. So let's do it. And so Pix4D, they've been great about that. Pix4D React.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we worked a lot with Pix4D, kind of bringing that to market. So I'm really happy to hear that it is actually being put to work in the field.
We try to stay
Wonderful.
away from brand names, to be
Sure.
agnostic, but that one we say, if you can't, if you're going to go out and do any of these rapid recon, if you're either using Pix4D reactor or not, right? So if you don't know how to do
Fair.
it, yeah.
Fair enough. We have one here from Maggie. In your experience, how has the connectivity of your drone affect the data collection? Do you suggest network amplifiers or something else?
So we haven't, all right, there are drones like the Parrot series that rely on the Wi-Fi, and that is a problem, local Wi-Fi. We have typically used, whenever possible, the DJI series, which have invested a great deal in their light bridge and fixed wing. So we have not had as much wireless. The bigger wireless, the killer wireless for us has been, everybody keeps expecting the person flying out in the field to somehow have 60, megabyte upload rate, which we don't have. We have to take a thumb drive back to wherever we're going. And we've got papers on that. Say, oh, but Starlink, you'll just bring the little Starlink thing. I said, no, by day 3, we are 4 times more than what that can handle. Right.
So you're still doing the sneaker running of data.
Yes, sneaker net is the
Yeah,
best thing.
fair.
We do cringe on the Wi-Fi based drones because it's a bit unreliable and just you don't get much distance. So
Sure thing. And we've got another one here from Kate Starks. Do you ever wish for other capabilities in drones that you could use in your work? So if you were queen of the world, what would you dream up for drones so that they could do more for you?
So for the drones, we've always got the, what we think of the platform wish list. And I could go in about the sensors I'd like, and we've got a nice little spiffy LiDAR system, which is like spend half your life calibrating it, but once you've got it, it mostly works. Mostly. I love that. All right. I actually find it more fascinating. The wish list is behind that post-processing. So, hey, we've all been flying, and now I've been working hard. I'm staying in the sun. Now I've got I forgot to quality check the data. Yay. The system is smart enough, should be able to say, oh no, I didn't take any pictures, or the pictures are all fuzzy, but they don't put that in stuff. And then it's like, I need to change the name. I need to be able to specify the file folders and how I want the names. Oh no, I now have to take the SD card out. I have to type it. I have to do this. And now I have to run Pix4D. And now I have to do that. But now I have to move it over to another system and do that. And I want to use the AI stuff to do. Look, you want to count of the buildings that are damaged. Just give me the, and just do this in the field, the edge computing. And what we see, the developers and the user interfaces they were going in a great direction, and now they're becoming worse because after, by day 2, you are now flying. You are likely to be flying at fatigue levels of being legally drunk. Dr. Camille Perez and Dr. Renshon, they did these amazing studies. And yeah, so you're prone to human error, and the human error, the drones are pretty smart now, right? They don't follow the sky. They do follow directions. And as long as you set up the parameters correctly, can also be a problem with fatigue. It's what you do with it afterwards. And so the users the manufacturers tend to be like, oh yeah, hey, look, it's a pre-picture. You've got screaming. We keep things really small. It's like, well, important things should maybe be bigger. And yeah, there's a lot of human factors to trust. Okay. Sorry.
Understood. So I want to dig in a little bit more on the LiDAR, just because that's kind of my new baby is getting into LiDAR and applications of LiDAR. Sounds like you haven't been using LiDAR in emergency management scenarios, and predominantly because of the calibration challenges in the field. Is that what I understood?
No, LiDAR, one of the size, weight, and cost. I mean, what they first off, you got to get one that you can put on a drone, and
Hmm.
there's still ones that you have to put on an M300, M600 enterprise class drone. Flying one of those at a disaster is hard because they're expensive. You can barely get one into an SUV. The batteries require a generator. The little Mavic Pros, you just plug it into the 12 volt in your car and you're recharging, right? So now you can have three of them easy. You just stack them in between the console, right? So the size is a problem. The cost is a problem. So now you're flying 50,000 versus 3,000.
Sure.
Oh, let's fly that over water. Yeah, no, but yeah, kind of stuff. So you've got that as a problem there. And then it's finicky. They're just so thrilled. You get one that's small enough to mount on anything. They're like, hey, look, we're happy as engineers. Game over. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, you have to do these figure eights, and you have to do this, and then you have to turn around 3 times, and then you have to download it perfectly right there. And it's like, yes,
It has come a long way in the last 16 months or so.
right. And you don't have to.
Especially even, yeah, no, we can get them on medium-sized drones now, so you don't have to take up so much space. But yeah, I would love to maybe take that offline or have a different conversation about it, because there are more current kind of applications for it that are not quite as expensive as what you're thinking, and it has come down in size. So if there's a
Right.
crossover that we can, kind of bring that to the forefront, I would love to have that discussion.
Yeah, we'd
Do we
love
have,
to see the smaller ones. We know they are
yeah.
miniaturizing, and that is one thing engineers are excellent at doing is miniaturization and cost. So as there's more demand, and
Mm-hmm.
they're very valuable because now you've got in the flooding, this is also helping you with the drainage issues. And what we're saying
Yes.
is for City of College Station, we're flying to get the drainage before the next big set of rains. So now you can
Yes.
see what the true one is and at greater accuracy. So I've mostly been talking in this talk, I focused on the missions during
Live.
disaster, but
Yes.
the
Yes.
before is so important, particularly with flooding.
Yeah, 100%. And the speed of getting uh, those data sets created into 3D models so you can see what is where, and the ability to flag and categorize different types of vegetation so you can remove it, you can see the contours, exactly to your point with regards to floodplains and challenged areas. Maggie, you've got your hand up. Go ahead and hit us live.
Hi, yes, thank you. Being a catastrophe adjuster, this is just amazing information. I've got two questions, but the very first one is, with the threat of DJI being banned, you've got a lot of government agencies involved. Is that going to be a concern, or have you addressed that at all?
Yeah, it's been a real problem. So Florida banned it, and they can't fly for their missions, any DJI products. And of course, there's a cost of replacing your fleet, and there's a functionality gap. So that was a problem. We've done something similar in Texas. I was able to get an exemption for my 600 so I can keep flying my LiDAR uh, for research, because it's hard to find things that are in the right size category uh, for the different things. Uh, but you see, there's something going before Congress right now is going back and reviewing on the DJI stuff. I think a lot there are trade-offs. What are the devil and a lot of the vulnerabilities and risk associated with DJI seem to be manageable. Uh, the cost benefit, but a lot of that's over my pay grade. I don't want to get in trouble.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But I have one other question. Everyone's listening here, and obviously most of us have our hearts in the right places, that we want to provide these services. We have the experience to fly. I mean, where do you go to let the agencies know you're available? Or do I mean, how do we follow through to provide these kind of services?
Well, it's yeah, and that's always been a tough thing, right? Because these are emergency manager professionals, these are fire rescue, all these groups. They are professionals. They've got their own little world, and they love people just walking up and telling them that, oh, you're stupid, and I've got this great solution to fix your problems. And it's like, do you know what my problems are? Do you know? And that's what's traditionally happened. And so they tend to be very resistant when you say, hey, I've got drones. It's like, so my recommendation is always start local, you know, nicely approach your city, try to do it. Sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, you know, there can be a bit of a, and I use this gender specific, good old boys club. Fine, you know, be fine, and eventually the main thing is start early. The A lot of times we'll get people that, oh, we're going to fly drones. We can fly drones during the disaster, and they announce this and do it the day before the hurricane hits or the day before the flood, and it's like, or during the flood. All right, hey, we're going to fly drones for you now, and or in one case, and when the wildfires, a group went out, flew, didn't tell anybody, and then just showed up with thumb drives saying, hey, here's the images, have at it. Uh, they're mapping images. You'll need to stitch them together. Bye. And then did a big press release about how special they were. And I was thinking, yeah, special. That's the phrase. So the agency couldn't do anything with it. They were first off, they were appalled that anybody was in an area that wasn't supposed to have anybody there, was out flying a drone. So that was weird, because what if they had, it was shut for crewed aviation with the TFR. And then second, where's this data coming from? I mean, how a rando shows up with a thumb drive. How do we know that that's like of this fire, you know, of this year? And so there's a legal accountability, evidence accountability thing. You know, you wouldn't do this if you were, you know, on a murder mystery. You wouldn't expect somebody to come in with, oh, look, I've taken DNA evidence for you. You don't have to worry about it. And at the same time, assuming that the agency had the software and the experience and the extra people to go deal with Pix4D Mapper or something to do this, it was just really outrageous. Fortunately, that was a case where Justin was on site, and he said, look, I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll pull it together for you, right? You know, and figure it out. And therefore, but you know, so it's usually too late by the time of the disaster. So you know, if you were thinking about flying for, if you're in an area that does hurricanes, you would want to have reached out before the start of hurricane season, which is June 1, and say, hey, you got this. Can we help? Is there anything we can do? Could we sit in on your training classes? Do you want us to take any of the FEMA, the 800, the, you know, the ICS series? What can we do to help? And then you might have to do it a couple of times, you know, to show that you're sincere.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on that, Robin. I did put in a couple of links there for anyone interested in getting started. So the training website for FEMA, and then the National Association of Search and Rescue. So that gets into kind of the local areas and organizations, and they kind of feed one another. And what Robin said was, you know, start local. So get involved with the people that are doing this on a volunteer basis, on a daily basis, and learn the process, learn how to be an active part of the team, if you will.
And we also on our podcast try to go through the specialty things that make this different than, say, flying a structure fire or flying for real estate or flying for that. How do you bring those skills over? What skills? And part of that is understanding the mission. So you start looking and say, well, you know, they may be very good at that, but I bet they're not very good at the software part. I can add value. For instance, with our city government, they were like, yeah, we got drones. And I said, well, we can do the LiDAR, and we can also do visual. elevation maps. And then we became their best friends for free, right? And so that, yeah. So that's part of the thing. And part of CRASAR is that we try to do it. There's a lot of things, a lot of people when they go out to, it's different than a wilderness search and rescue, different than some of these other things because you're working in austere environments. If you're in a flood, everything's flooded. So where are you going to set up? All of a sudden that gets constrained. By the way, as the group I found, you find a dry spot big enough to put a drone on, it's occupied by every snake and scorpion and cockroach and everything from all those flooded fields. We're all in it together. So, we were flying from the back of a truck because we didn't step on the ground, jump in the cab, right? So so it's hot, austere, very different things. We've seen people that didn't think about, you've got to bring your own water, you got to bring your own food, you got to bring your own emergency management kit, you got to know all these things. So we try to do that.
And they go through a lot of that in the FEMA training. So I would highly recommend people get involved with FEMA and take some of those training sessions.
Yeah, and they're free.
Absolutely.
The ICS series are free, which is nice.
Yeah, that's wonderful. All right, we've got 10 minutes here. I don't see any other questions coming through, some thank yous, but you're definitely still open here for questions if anyone has questions. We've got some time here. All right, then maybe we'll wrap up early and get, just in time, Maggie, go for it.
I figured if no one else is asking questions, I'll ask another one.
Please do.
You mentioned the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit more information on your podcast with
it's over on crasar.org. We have a YouTube channel and disasters and donuts where we try to do short.
Can you share that link? Do you have a link on that?
And
Robin, I wasn't sure. Do you have your email? Could you put that in the chat also? That way that if we have any further questions,
I'm sure
we can contact you. That would be great. Thank you so much.
And
such great information.
Yeah. And we're part of a larger group of universities as well that do more academic things. We're part of the one of the national AI institutes. So I could talk long about how the fun stuff for me is actually using the AI in a good way, accurate and stuff to make this all work.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robin, for all of that wonderful information. If there's no more questions, I'm going to... oh, yes.
Good afternoon. I just want to say, hey, Robin Murphy, how are you? This is Karita Barnes. I'm actually at work and I can see you, but you can't see me. I'm in a skiff environment. My dear, I just wanted to say, how are you? And it was a pleasure listening in on you. And I hope we can actually get together soon. I did some work with Dr. Murphy a while back, and we've stayed in contact. I just wanted to say hi. I didn't want to miss this for the world because I hadn't seen you in a long time.
I just love the phrase, from a skiff environment. I just feel
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm in the mix as always, but like I said, I did what I had to do to make sure. But when you have time, I'll definitely reach out and we'll talk. But as always, this was definitely very good information, and hopefully we'll talk soon. So I just wanted to say hi to Dr. Murphy. Dr. Murphy, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. Appreciate the time and energy. And we are skipping next month because it is going to be Commercial UAV Expo. So hopefully we'll see lots and lots of you there in September for Commercial UAV Expo. I can drop some links there in the chat box before we roll as well, just in case no one has heard of or have participated in CommUAV before. I'm sure most of you have. So thank you very much for joining us. Our next session will be the first Wednesday in October, which I don't have here in front of me. Is it October 2nd, Sharon? Awesome. So we'll see you October 2nd. Thank you, Dr. Murphy, for your time and energy and all of the really valuable information. We look forward to seeing you in October.
And yay, women in drones.
Oh, Sharon,
thanks,
there you
Robin.
go.
Really appreciate your assistance today. It was a great presentation.
I see Aaron's got his hand up.
Yes,
Thank
Aaron,
you.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Aaron. You're on mute, though. You want to unmute yourself? Maybe he was just saying hello.
Maybe, yes.
Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button, guys. Sorry.
All good.
Dr. Robin,
I have
high-five
to
me.
support all of you in the
I-10
future.
me, Dr. Robin.
I-10. There you go.
Yes. Another